I can't describe torture to you, but I can try. Picture this with me. I have been in a cell smaller than this rug, 2 levels below the ground, for over 100 days. It was 4x9. It had a thick, dark, soulless steel door. At the corner, it had a hole for your bodily functions. For over 100 days, I have been naked. I have been tortured on a daily basis. I have been beaten, humiliated, degraded, and even sexually assaulted. My biggest fear was not the beating. I was terrified from that door. My greatest fear when that door opened, that I didn't know what was going to happen. In 2011, the Syrian people opened their door to their revolution. It was a revolution for freedom and democracy. The Syrian people broke their own door of fear. It was a door that was instilled by President Assad and his family for over 4 decades. My story is one of 1,000 stories. Stories of a brave man and a brave woman who had been held in detention and tortured for their use of their strong voice to stand against oppression and injustice. Over the past 8 years, we have lost over 500,000 innocent civilians in the war to gain freedom and democracy. I was one of the fortunate one. I made it out of Syria. I made it out of jail. And as of May 2018, I became a US citizen. November 2018, I walked into a Chicago voting booth. I can't tell you what amazing feeling I had that day. I was proud, full of joy. I can say I was honored. For the first time in my life, 29 years old, I am participating in a true and a free election. I was not afraid. There was no one to force me or beat me to elect anybody on the ballots. I had the right and the freedom to choose whoever I thought was fit to be in office. That day, I came to one realization I'm going to share with you today. Citizenship is not just a granted right. It's an active process between us, the citizen, and the government we elect. In the last couple months, in the Chicago mayoral election, we hit nearly record low. Only 34% of registered voters voted. Only 34%. We live in a free society. We enjoy our democracy. We cherish the right to say and do just about everything we want to. In Syria, people did not have the same kind of life or the same kind of rights to do what we have here in the United States. Syria is a typical police state. People disappear, they get held in detention, and sometimes they either disappear or get murdered by secret police. Thousands of men have lost their life since al-Assad family took power in 1970. These people have lost their life for the simple one reason: seeking freedom and democracy, or sometimes even to dare think about freedom and democracy. Back in high school, I was a 14-year-old student. On one normal school day, my classroom door bolted violently open. Armed military police walked into my classroom with AK-47, and they rushed towards me. They dragged me out of my seat. I can still remember the sound of the metal desk dragging as it crossed across the classroom. They dragged me in front of everyone. They detained me for a simple reason: I shared political view. They took me to a secret destination. My crime that day? I refused to join al-Ba'ath party. Unlike the rest of the students in my classroom, unlike the rest of the people in my country. Al-Ba'ath party is the one and only political party in Syria you're allowed to join. And dictator Assad is chairman. I never believed in a free society, a one political party can lead society or lead a country. I always believed for a country to grow and flourish, we have to have a free political life. In Syria, that was a dangerous idea. What I have been through in my first detention or in my solitary confinement, none of us here today has to go through in order to exercise political freedom. There is no military police or secret security agency will come knock on our door when we participate in democracy. Yet, there is people refuse to participate and sometimes don't even register to vote. I know some of us think our government doesn't work for us or doesn't even care for us. I know some of us think our vote does not matter, or it would not change the outcome of an election. But how can we expect to make a change or to ensure the government working for us when we do not do our side of the civil duty, which is voting? We cannot protect freedom. We can't expect freedom and democracy to last if we don't protect them by going to the voting booth. April 22nd, 2011. That was the first time I experienced freedom. I was free that day. I was marching down the streets in my city in a huge protest against the government of Assad in Syria. It was one of many protests that erupted across the country. These protests had one main goal: to change the political life in Syria and to bring freedom, democracy, and justice for the Syrian people. None of us that day were afraid. None of us was afraid. We all felt free. I wasn't afraid personally. I was not afraid from Assad. I wasn't afraid from his secret police. I didn't care that I could die that day. The absence of fear came from one reason. I had 10,000 men and women marching down the street chanting, "The people want to take down the regime. The people want to take down the regime." When that protest ended and the people dispersed, the fear came just right back in. I was terrified one more time. The fear came from the idea of being alone. The idea of some secret informant might tip your name to a secret police, and then they will raid your home and get arrested. Despite having that fear, I continued to protest. I spoke very well English, so I became a media spokesman. I felt the best way to fight Assad's propaganda is to speak to Western media, so I did. Assad claimed that what is happening in Syria was not a peaceful revolution to lead the country into democracy and to gain freedom. He said, and his propaganda claimed, it was a group of armed Islamists who wanted to take over the country and murder the minorities, and especially the Christians. Assad's false propaganda gave me so many reasons to stand out and speak against him and his propaganda. In one of my many interviews, I decided to use a pseudonym, Muhammad Ali. By using a pseudonym, I was able to disguise my real identity. I was able to bring what's really happening on the ground in Syria to this Western media. I was able to put away the fear of being known and getting arrested and getting killed. One night, I had a faceless Skype interview with a British correspondent and he was in Damascus. The interview was broadcasted on one of the major British networks. It was under the light when Assad wanted to meet with the revolution leaders and propose how could we solve the problem. The interviewer asked me about that. Would we meet and negotiate with Assad? So I responded, how could we meet with Assad and negotiate with him when his army and his tanks sieging and bombing our cities? How could you sit with Assad on a table when his pistol pointed at you? There's no way to negotiate with Assad. At the end of the interview, the interviewer said, thank you. That was a strong message from the heart of Damascus to Bashar al-Assad. Thank you, Emad. He forgot my pseudonym. He outed me. I knew I had to go into hiding. During my hiding, it was the holy month of Ramadan. It's a month where families come together. I missed my mom. I came out of hiding. I went to visit her. The secret police put it together, and they knew who I am. Our home was raided, so I was arrested. So was my dad. They knocked me down with the back of an AK-47 straight to my forehead. They proceeded to beat and arrest my dad. Then they drove us to a secret location where I was stripped naked and thrown in a solitary confinement 2 levels below the ground. The first thing you lose under the ground is the sense of time. You can't see sunlight. There's no way to tell day or night. And losing the sense of time is a form of torture. Day after day, that door to that confinement was opened, and I was dragged to yet another session of torture. I was tortured mentally, physically, and sexually. One day, the door opened. I was dragged. They took turns that day, urinating on me. It was fun for them. Later, they chained me to a wall and left me there hanging for hours. And when they came back, took me down the wall, threw me back in the cell. I knew that moment back in the cell, I need to die. Can't take it anymore. No one can endure such a pain. When you are in a solitary confinement, you don't have so many tools in your disposal to end your life. I was naked. So I banged my head to the wall. I managed to knock myself unconscious. Hours later, I woke up, bleeding, shivering from the cold. So I huddled myself in a corner and I sat and huddled. A cold breeze came from under that steel door, brushed against my face. For a minute, I wasn't there anymore. That breeze took me all the way home to my nice marble flat in Syria, back home in my city. I was sitting right on the floor of my kitchen. I felt I was home. I am not anymore in that dark cell. I remembered my cat. I named him Sasha. He looked like a lion. I remembered when I sat in my floor in that kitchen and fed him salami. When I used to give him the food from my hand, He loved it. He bit it right out of my hand. When I leave the rest on the floor, he stops eating. So I had to pick it up again and feed him. I can't tell you honestly today how I felt that moment, why I was in my kitchen. I was the furthest I could be from my kitchen. I was in a dark cell 2 levels under the ground in Damascus. But I felt peace. I knew they can hurt me. I knew they can beat me. But I knew for sure that moment they can't break my will. I remember the poem by Dylan Thomas that says, "Do not go gentle into the good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." I knew that all the injustice and the tortures had shrunken too small in front of the will of a rebel. I knew they are beating inside of me their fear. I knew they're beating inside of me their fear of Syria, a free Syria. I knew they are beating their fear of losing power. I knew they were beating in me a free Syria that does not have Assad or his dogs. Over the past 8 years, we have lost 500,000 innocent people in Syria for the fight for democracy and freedom that we have here today in the United States. All of us have the same freedom here in the United States. The Syrian people don't. They are still fighting. So for us here in the States, we must participate in our democracy. We must protect our freedom. We must register to vote. We must vote. There is no greater freedom or democracy than the freedom and democracy that we choose ourselves. Fast forward, April 12, 2019. I stand in front of you as a fortunate man who made it out of Syria, out of jail. I am a citizen of this great nation where I can truly be part of a free democracy. I am a father of a strong-minded, beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Sophia. My only fear today, as the father of the 4-year-old, strong-minded, beautiful girl, Sophia, my only fear today it's when the door opens and I'll find a boyfriend waiting for her. Thank you so much.